While I usually seek out a suspenseful world might end crime novel for a good beach read, I went with something a little different this holiday weekend. A suspenseful world might end crime thriller from the nonfiction section, featuring a main character you couldn't make up if you tried.
Some people call it coronavirus. That sounds like a beautiful place in Italy, right?
When somebody's the president of the United States, the authority is total. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
Once again, for those in the back, no, they did not. The book is I Alone Can Fix It, Donald J. Trump's catastrophic final year. I'm joined now by one of its co-authors, along with Carol Leonnig. That would be Philip Rucker of the Washington Post, where he won a Pulitzer Prize for reporting on Russian interference in the 2016 election. He's also a political analyst for NBC News and MSNBC, and the co-author of A Very Stable Genius, Donald J. Trump's Testing of America. Philip, it's good to meet you. Congratulations on a spectacular book.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to talk with you today.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. Now, if after reading your book, I was even more convinced that Donald Trump was a narcissistic, reality-denying, incompetent, and possibly mentally ill president, would I have read correctly?
Well, your conclusion is not unlike the conclusion that so many of the people who worked with President Trump over the years came to conclude. That's according to the interviews they did with Carol and with me. We spoke to more than 140 senior administration officials, cabinet secretaries, advisors to the president, friends and confidants of the president. And they all drew similar conclusions about his character, about his mental state, and about his ability to lead, to govern the nation. They were very concerned about the ways in which he struggled to govern.
Philip, I know you're not an editorialist, and maybe that's why I was stunned and had to read a second time one of the opening lines, I think in the prologue, where you essentially say, you and your colleague, Donald Trump cared more about it himself than his country. How hard was that for you to write?
That's a really important line in the prologue of the book, because I think it's central to understanding this entire presidency. And Carol and I didn't take it lightly to come to that conclusion. As you noted, we're not editorialists. We don't share opinions in our reporting. We're journalists. We're objective finders of fact. And, in this case, we did all of this scrupulous reporting, these interviews, this review of documents and of the history we all lived through these last 4 years. And that's the conclusion we had to draw, because that's where the facts led. It's not sort of a partisan take, but it's the cold, hard reality of the situation.
How close was Donald Trump to attempting a coup after, to quote him, the election was stolen from him, Philip?
Very close. So close, in fact, that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the highest ranking military officer in the United States, General Mark Milley, thought that there was a coup at foot. He was worried about Trump installing loyalists at the FBI, at the CIA, and throughout the Pentagon, and using his power as the commander-in-chief to try to turn the military in a way to keep him in power, keep him in office, even though he had lost the free and fair election. This was a deep concern of Milley's. It was shared by the other Joint Chiefs, and they actually had discussions in that period between the November election and the January inauguration of Joe Biden about what they would do to try to block, to withstand an order from President Trump that they considered to be unconstitutional or dangerous. They were all prepared to resign individually.
One of the things that troubled me in terms of the response to your book is General Milley got a lot of praise, which he deserves. I'm not taking that away. But what I think most of those analysts miss was it wasn't institutional guardrails that we can always rely upon when there's an unhinged or rogue president. It was the honor of individuals, the Milleys. Even Attorney General Barr refused to go ahead with the Insurrection Act against Black Lives Matter and against, helping to advance the big lie. So does that not trouble you as somebody who's followed the White House this closely? Had it not been a General Milley, but a General Flynn, for example, maybe that coup wouldn't have been just attempted.
I think you're exactly right, and that is such an important point for people to understand. The institutions while they held, they did not hold because of the strength of the institutions and of that infrastructure. Rather, they held because of the strong character and backbone, the spine of people like General Milley and even Attorney General Barr, who was a partisan attorney general who had Trump's backing time and again in political cases. But in the most extreme case after the election, Barr did the right thing and understood that there was no widespread fraud as the president had imagined it, and he would not allow the Justice Department to go along with Trump's pursuit of effectively overturning the results of this election. Same too with Milley and the Pentagon, and keeping the military out of politics and keeping the president from being able to use the military to hold on to power the way an authoritarian dictator might do in another land.
You know, as someone who admits that I suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, I assumed I wouldn't learn much from your book, but I learned a hell of a lot, including about what Donald Trump was doing during the insurrection on January 6th. Can you give us a brief summary of, while he was not trying to stop the violence, what was he doing, Philip?
Remember the morning of January 6th, President Trump went out to the Ellipse and spoke at that Stop the Steal rally. Mm-hmm. And then when he returned to the Oval Office, he was watching television. He was watching on TV live as thousands of his supporters stormed the Capitol, literally at his direction. They marched to the U.S. Capitol. They stormed the steps. They started breaking into the building. And Trump was watching TV. And according to the people who saw him that day, who talked to me and Carol for this book, he was pleased by what he saw. He was happy to see his supporters staging this sort of physical show of force to try to intimidate Republican lawmakers into overturning the election. He loved seeing the red Make America Great Again hats, the Trump flags flying. He enjoyed it. It wasn't until it became a truly violent and lethal scene at the Capitol that he understood that there was a problem here. And yet even then it took 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours for Trump to actually issue a statement telling his supporters to stand down, to be safe, and to go home. It took a lot of lobbying, according to our reporting, from Ivanka Trump, his daughter, from Mark Meadows, the White House chief of staff, and other allies who were calling the president, begging him to issue that statement. And he finally, reluctantly did so.
You know, almost everything you need to know about Donald Trump, in my estimation, is told by the fact that he agreed to meet with the two of you at Mar-a-Lago in the lobby, which is also incredible. Laura Ingraham walking by, I assume the people setting up the buffet walking by, not for 1 hour, but for 2.5. Why did Donald Trump, I assume he knew about your prior book, why did Donald Trump agree to meet with you, do you think?
It's interesting. He not only knew about our first book, A Very Stable Genius, but he hated it. He attacked it on Twitter. He called me and Carol stone cold losers. He complained about it to his advisors. And I have a relationship with Trump going back 4 or 5 years from interviewing him many times as a candidate and then as president in the Oval Office. But he would not do an interview with us for the first book. The second book, though, I Alone Can Fix It, he agreed to the interview, and he didn't even take much persuading. He said yes right away. He wanted to tell his story. He wanted to try to shape, to curate the history that we were telling of his final year in office. But I think more than anything, he was bored. Remember, he was out of office. He wasn't interacting with reporters on a daily basis like he was used to at the White House, sitting down there at Mar-a-Lago, surrounded by all of his courtiers and playing golf and the steaks and the buffet and the chocolate cake and all of that. He just wanted somebody to talk to. And I think he liked the idea that Carol and I would fly down to Florida and listen to what he had to say for so long.
I was about to say he picked the wrong people, but in fact, I think he picked the right people. Your book is terrific. Congratulations to both of you, Philip. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.